Welcome to Boring Sleep, a place where knowledge becomes calm and curiosity slowly turns into rest. Tonight, we begin a peaceful journey into the secrets of our planet Earth, a world shaped by fire, water, wind, and time. In this slow documentary, we will explore how Earth was formed, how its landscapes were created, and how invisible natural forces quietly sustain all life. This documentary is designed to be gentle and unhurried, allowing your mind to relax and your thoughts to drift into sleep. If you enjoy slow science documentaries made for rest and deep sleep, please subscribe to the channel and join our growing community of calm minds. Your support helps us create more peaceful journeys through science, nature, and the universe. Now, take a slow breath, release the day, and let us begin our quiet exploration of Earth and its hidden secrets. Before anything living existed, before oceans covered the surface, before air could be breathed, there was only darkness, dust, and quiet motion. In the beginning, Earth was not yet a planet. It was a scattered collection of tiny particles drifting through space. These particles were born from ancient stars that had ended their lives in distant explosions. They carried within them the elements that would one day become stone, water, and life itself. Slowly, very slowly, gravity began to gather these fragments together. Dust pulled toward dust. Rock met rock. Heat grew as matter accumulated. Over millions of years, a glowing sphere formed in the silent void. This sphere was young Earth. At this stage, Earth was a world of fire. Its surface was not solid ground, but endless oceans of molten rock. Volcanoes erupted constantly. Meteorites crashed without warning. Every impact reshaped the surface again and again. There was no sky as we know it, no clouds, no wind. Only thick gases rising from the planet's interior. Carbon dioxide, steam, sulfur. Heavy vapors filled the space above the burning surface. Lightning flashed across this toxic sky. Thunder echoed across empty land. For a long time, rain did not fall. Water could not exist in liquid form. The heat was too intense. Then, slowly, Earth began to cool. As the surface temperature dropped, something remarkable happened. Water vapor condensed into clouds. Clouds gathered and thickened. And for the first time in the planet's history, rain began to fall. It rained for thousands of years. Rain fell on hot stone. Steam rose. Rain fell again. Oceans began to form. These oceans did not arrive gently. They boiled. They mixed with minerals from volcanic rock. They absorbed gases from the young atmosphere. Earth was learning balance. Deep inside the planet, heavier elements such as iron sank toward the center. Lighter materials rose toward the surface. This created layers within Earth: a core, a mantle, and a crust. From this inner motion, Earth formed something invisible but powerful: a magnetic field. This field wrapped around the planet like a silent shield. It protected Earth from the violent winds of the sun. It allowed the atmosphere to remain instead of being stripped away into space. Without this shield, Earth would have become empty and dry, like many other worlds. But Earth held on. The surface continued to change. Mountains rose from cooling rock. They were torn down by rain and wind. Seas expanded and retreated. Land shifted slowly beneath the surface through unseen movements. Time passed not in years, but in ages. Millions of years became the rhythm of change. The young Earth was not peaceful. It was active, restless, always moving. Yet within this chaos, patterns began to form. Temperatures stabilized. Oceans deepened. The sky grew thinner and clearer. Light from the sun reached the surface more gently. This was not the arrival of life, but the preparation for it. Earth became a laboratory without intention, a place where chemistry and energy met again and again. Water mixed with minerals. Lightning delivered energy. Sunlight warmed the surface. Molecules formed, broke apart, formed again. Nothing alive yet, but everything necessary. The planet entered a long phase of quiet transformation. No witnesses existed. No sound carried meaning. Only physical laws guided every motion. Earth was shaping itself, not to host life deliberately, but to allow the possibility of life to exist. Every mountain that cooled, every ocean that deepened, every cloud that formed was part of this silent design. From space, Earth would have appeared as a glowing world wrapped in clouds, a planet slowly finding its place between fire and ice. Not too hot, not too cold. A fragile balance began to emerge. This balance did not guarantee success. It only allowed the next chapter to begin. The story of Earth was still only a story of stone and water. But the conditions were changing. The surface was no longer hostile to chemistry. The sky was no longer poisonous fire alone. The oceans were no longer boiling. Earth had survived its own birth. It had cooled. It had settled. It had learned stability. And in that stability, something new would eventually awaken. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but quietly, as everything else had. The silent birth of Earth was complete. A world of fire had become a world of water and rock. A planet without life had become a planet ready for life. This was the first long breath of our home, and all that would follow, forests, animals, humans, would rest upon this ancient beginning, a beginning written in silence, fire, and time. As the oceans deepened and the skies slowly changed, Earth entered a calmer stage of its long history. The surface was no longer ruled by endless fire. Volcanoes still shaped the land, but water and wind began to soften the planet. The first true atmosphere formed. It was heavy with carbon dioxide and volcanic gases. There was no oxygen yet. The sky was dark and filled with clouds. Sunlight reached the surface only in weak and scattered waves. Yet this atmosphere was essential. It trapped heat from the sun, It reduced the difference between day and night. It allowed water to remain on the surface instead of escaping into space. Earth was learning balance. Beneath the oceans, heat and minerals rose from deep cracks in the crust. Warm water mixed with cold seawater. Chemical reactions unfolded in silence. Simple molecules drifted through the seas. They joined. They separated. They joined again in new forms. No purpose guided them, only physical laws. Some structures lasted longer than others. Some began to store energy. Some began to repeat their own form. This was not life yet. It was preparation. The oceans became laboratories of change. Sunlight warmed the surface waters. Lightning delivered bursts of energy. Minerals dissolved into the sea from volcanic rock. Slowly, the chemistry of Earth shifted. Carbon dioxide dissolved into water and became part of stone. Water vapor condensed and returned as rain. The sky grew thinner and clearer. Day and night became regular. Temperatures became more stable. Earth's breathing became gentle. Long cycles of warming and cooling appeared. Winds followed repeating paths. Ice formed and melted at the poles. Within this rhythm, the first living cells emerged. They were small and fragile. They absorbed energy and divided. They changed the oceans slowly with every generation. Some of these cells learned to use sunlight. They transformed light into chemical energy. They released oxygen into the water and air. At first, oxygen was dangerous. It altered the oceans. It changed the sky. But it also created protection. A thin layer formed high above the surface. It reduced harmful radiation from the sun. The surface became safer. Life remained in the oceans for a long time. Continents continued their slow movement. Mountains rose and wore away. Rivers carried minerals into the seas. Storms reshaped coastlines. Earth became more diverse. There were warm and cold regions, shallow seas and deep oceans, highlands and wide plains. Each environment offered different conditions. Energy flowed from the sun into water and stone. Heat flowed from Earth's core toward the surface. Matter moved between sky, sea, and land. These movements formed cycles. Water rose into clouds and returned as rain. Carbon moved between air and ocean. Minerals traveled from rock into living cells and back again. Earth had become a system, not a single object, but many processes working together. The planet was no longer only rock and fire. It had become a living environment. Quiet, slow, patient. Life spread through the seas. The oceans grew richer. The sky grew lighter. The surface grew more stable. Earth had learned how to breathe, not with lungs, but with cycles, not with intention, but with motion. A world of chaos had become a world of balance. The oceans of the young Earth moved in slow and endless cycles, guided by the distant pull of the moon and the gentle heat rising from below the crust. Within these waters, microscopic life continued to grow quietly, forming invisible worlds beneath the surface. Each tiny organism carried simple patterns of survival. copied again and again through time, changing only when the environment demanded it. Sunlight reached deeper into the seas as the atmosphere slowly cleared. Chemical reactions filled the water with energy and motion. Life learned to use light as a source of strength, transforming it into nourishment. This silent process reshaped the planet without sound or witness. Currents carried nutrients across vast distances. Warm waters mixed with cold. Minerals rose from the depths and spread through the surface layers. In this moving world, balance slowly emerged. Some organisms learned to gather energy directly from the sun. Others learned to depend on those first builders of food. A chain of connection formed, linking one form of life to another. Nothing existed alone. Everything depended on something else. Day followed night. Light followed darkness. These rhythms shaped the earliest biological clocks. Life adapted not only to place, but to time itself. Deep beneath the waves, volcanic vents released heat and minerals into the water. Here, life found another path. Without sunlight, organisms learned to draw energy from chemistry alone. These hidden communities survived in darkness, proof that life could exist without sky or stars. Slowly, the ocean floor recorded this history in layers of stone. Tiny remains settled into sediment. Over millions of years, these traces became part of the planet's memory. Earth preserved its earliest life in silence. Above the seas, continents began to rise and separate. Mountains formed and collapsed. Rivers carved their paths through ancient rock. Wind shaped the surface without intention. Rain fell on warm land and carried minerals back into the oceans. Clouds traveled across the sky without sound. Storms came and passed. The planet learned to move in cycles of water and air. Life responded to every change. When the seas cooled, organisms adapted. When the air transformed, life followed. Survival became an art of patience and adjustment. Oxygen slowly gathered in the atmosphere. This invisible gas changed everything. It allowed new forms of energy to exist. It prepared the world for greater complexity. In shallow waters, simple communities grew more organized. Cells learned to cooperate. Structures became more refined. Movement became possible. The first signs of diversity appeared. Different forms of life occupied different spaces. Some remained close to heat. Others followed light. Each found its place within the vast system of Earth. The planet itself became a living system. Rock, water, air, and life worked together without design. Not through force, but through balance. Not through speed, but through time. Silence ruled the surface of the world. There were no forests yet, no animals, only water, stone, and microscopic life moving in harmony. Every wave carried history. Every grain of sand held memory. The earth became a stage prepared for future life, even though none could yet see it. Life learned endurance before learning complexity. It learned to survive storms, heat, and cold. It learned to exist when conditions were harsh and uncertain. Slow change became the rule of the world. Nothing happened quickly. Everything unfolded through countless years. In this quiet age, the foundations of all future ecosystems were laid. The oceans became cradles of life. The atmosphere became a shield. The land became a promise. A silent transformation shaped the destiny of the planet. The world prepared itself for plants, for animals, and for awareness. But for now, it remained a calm and patient sphere of water and stone. Life continued its work unseen, not with noise, not with struggle, but with steady persistence. The young earth rested between fire and water, between chaos and order. And in this balance, the earliest story of life quietly continued to unfold. Water became the great architect of Earth's surface. It arrived slowly, carried by ancient comets, released from volcanic clouds, and gathered into vast basins. At first, the planet was wrapped in endless rain, but thousands of years, storms fell without rest. Rock cooled, steam condensed, and the first oceans were born. These early seas were warm and restless. They glowed with heat from the young planet's interior. Minerals dissolved into the water, turning the oceans into living laboratories of chemistry. Iron, sulfur, carbon, and salt mixed in silent motion, guided by gravity and time. Beneath the surface, cracks in the crust opened like breathing wounds. From them rose streams of heated water, rich in energy and elements. These deep vents became islands of activity in a dark world. No sunlight reached them, yet life found another path. Energy flowed from stone instead of sky. Chemical reactions replaced light, and tiny forms of existence learned to survive where no surface creature could. The oceans were not calm. Currents formed powerful rivers within the sea. Warm water traveled toward cold regions. Cold water sank into the depths. This endless circulation shaped climate long before land appeared. Above, clouds thickened. The sky darkened with volcanic dust. Lightning cut through the atmosphere, striking water again and again. Each flash created new molecules. Each storm added complexity to the planet's growing system. Slowly, continents began to rise, not as solid land, but as scattered islands of cooling stone. They were fragile and temporary. Waves erased them. Volcanoes rebuilt them. Earth learned how to reshape itself. Rivers were born. They carried minerals from mountains to seas. They carved valleys into young rock. They connected land and water into a single cycle. In shallow coastal zones, sunlight met nutrients. Here, life multiplied. Microscopic organisms spread across the surface of the sea like invisible forests. They absorbed light. They released oxygen. The air itself began to change. The sky was no longer poisonous. A new balance formed between ocean and atmosphere. Oxygen rose slowly, molecule by molecule, year by year. This quiet transformation prepared the world for greater complexity. Ice appeared at the poles, not as an enemy of life, but as a regulator of temperature. Frozen regions reflected sunlight back into space. They cooled the planet. They stabilized its climate. The ocean became Earth's memory. Every layer of water carried traces of ancient chemistry. Every current preserved a record of early change. Life and planet evolved together, bound by cycles of evaporation and rain. Silence ruled this world. No sound of animals, no wind through trees. Only waves, clouds, and chemical motion. Yet within this silence, a great preparation was underway. The stage was being built. The surface was becoming safe. The sky was becoming breathable. Water shaped everything it touched. Stone became soil. Heat became weather. Chemistry became biology. and the earth moved forward without knowing it. Toward forests, toward animals, toward awareness. All of this began with rain, with oceans, with the quiet patience of water reshaping a newborn world. The oceans continued to spread across the surface of the planet, wide, deep, and endlessly moving. They were never still. Waves touched empty shores, tides rose and fell, and invisible currents traveled through the darkness below. These movements shaped the future of Earth. Warm water rose from the depths. Cold water sank toward the ocean floor, creating slow rivers beneath the surface. Rivers that carried heat, minerals, and life itself across the planet. The seas became a great engine of balance. Above the water, clouds drifted slowly across the sky, carrying moisture from one horizon to another. Rain returned to the land, and rivers carried it back to the sea. The planet entered a cycle, a quiet loop of evaporation and return, of sky and ocean speaking to one another. Stone softened beneath the water, and soil began to appear, grain by grain, layer by layer. The land was no longer only rock. It became a surface that could hold memory and prepare for future growth. Wind followed steady paths, circling the globe, teaching the atmosphere how to move in harmony with the oceans. Storms rose and faded, without violence, without urgency, only repetition. In the shallow seas, life multiplied slowly. Tiny organisms floated near the light, absorbing energy from the sun and releasing oxygen into the water. The air changed again, becoming lighter, clearer, more open to the world below. The sky began to protect the surface, filtering harmful rays, softening the power of sunlight. Life grew stronger within this gentle shield. Beneath the waves, new forms appeared. Some learned to move, others learned to cling to stone. Communities formed, small ecosystems, built from patience and repetition. They shaped coastlines, they filtered water, they altered chemistry itself. Time passed, not in moments, but in ages. Continents continued their slow dance, drifting apart, colliding again, lifting mountains, creating valleys. Rivers carved paths across newborn land, carrying nutrients into the seas, feeding the invisible world below. Every drop of water became part of a story of motion, of connection, of survival. The oceans spoke to the sky spoke to the land, and the land returned everything to the sea. Earth became a single, breathing system. No creature ruled it, no voice guided it. Only physical laws, only balance. The surface cooled further, temperatures softened, and seasons began to form. Warm periods followed cold, light followed darkness, and the planet learned rhythm. In this rhythm, life learned timing, when to grow, when to rest, when to change. The world was still empty of animals, still silent of forests, but full of preparation. Every wave shaped tomorrow. Every cloud carried the future. The oceans became mirrors of the sky, reflecting light, storing heat, and calming extremes. Without them, the planet would burn or freeze. With them, it learned moderation. Life remained hidden in water, quiet, patient, growing in complexity. Some organisms learned to cooperate, others learned to compete. New forms slowly replaced the old. Diversity appeared, not suddenly, but step by step. The chemistry of the seas became richer, the structure of the land became firmer, and the sky became safer. Earth was no longer a young world of chaos. It was becoming a world of order. Not rigid, but balanced. Not fast, but steady. The planet did not rush toward the future. It allowed the future to form naturally. Every process repeated. Every cycle returned. Every change prepared the next. The oceans carried memory in every wave. The land carried history in every stone. And the sky carried light in every breath. The foundation of all later life was built here, in water, in wind, in endless motion. A world of patience, a world of preparation, a world quietly becoming alive. The oceans continued their endless movement, slow, deep, and constant. They carried heat from the equator to the cold poles and returned cold water back toward the warmth, teaching the planet how to share its energy. This motion created stability, not silence, but balance. Above the seas, clouds traveled across the sky, soft, white, and heavy with moisture. They released rain over distant lands, and the rain returned through rivers back to the oceans again. The earth learned circulation, a quiet conversation between sky and water. Stones softened under repeated rainfall, grain by grain. Rock turned into soil, and soil learned how to hold water. The surface of the planet became gentler, less sharp, less hostile. Winds followed curved paths around the globe, driven by differences in heat, guided by the spinning earth. Storms formed, not to destroy, but to distribute, to mix air and water, to refresh the surface. In the shallow seas, life expanded quietly. Tiny organisms formed layers, thin carpets of living matter, covering stones and sands. They absorbed light, they released oxygen, and they changed the color of the world. The sky slowly transformed from heavy and dark to lighter and clearer. A thin shield grew high above the planet, protecting the surface from harmful radiation, softening the sun's power. This protection allowed new forms of life to exist, not only in water, but closer to the surface. The oceans cooled into stable systems, no longer boiling, no longer chaotic. Temperature differences created zones of life, warm regions, cool regions, deep regions, and shallow coasts. Each zone offered a different future. Some organisms learned to float, others learned to attach to rock. Some learned to move slowly through water. Simple shapes became more complex, not quickly, but steadily. Time passed in silence, millions of years without sound. The continents continued to drift, separating, colliding, lifting mountains, and opening new seas. Rivers carried nutrients from the land into the ocean, feeding invisible communities below. Sediments settled into layers, recording storms, recording heat, recording change. The earth began to remember its own story, written in stone and water. The moon guided the tides, pulling the oceans gently, creating a pulse, a heartbeat for the planet. Life adapted to this rhythm, growing when waters rose, resting when waters fell. The planet became a clock, measuring time in waves and light. There were still no forests, no animals, no voices, only water, wind, stone, and silent life. Yet this silence was full of meaning. Chemical chains became longer, structures became stronger, and cooperation slowly appeared. Some organisms depended on others, some protected each other, some competed for space and light. The first true ecosystems emerged, simple, fragile, and powerful. The balance between ocean and atmosphere grew deeper. Carbon moved between air and water. Oxygen spread through the sky, and nitrogen remained as quiet support. Every element found its role. Heat escaped into space when it became too strong. Cold softened when oceans released stored warmth. The earth regulated itself, not by decision, but by motion. Day followed night, night followed day, and seasons began to whisper across the surface. Warm periods, cool periods, light periods, dark periods. Life learned patience, learned timing, learned to wait. The surface of the world grew more solid, more stable, more welcoming. Shorelines formed, beaches appeared, and the meeting place of land and sea became rich with change. Here, life gathered in great numbers, feeding on sunlight and minerals. Here, the future prepared itself. The oceans were no longer only water. They were memory, movement, and life. The sky was no longer only gas, it was protection and breath. The land was no longer only stone, it was foundation and promise. The planet became a complete system: water, air, stone, and life, working together in endless cycles. Nothing rushed, nothing stopped. The earth moved forward quietly, toward forests, toward animals, toward awareness. All of this began with water, with motion, with balance. A silent world learning how to live through time and patience and endless change. The surface of the earth continued to change, slowly, patiently, without intention. Along the edges of the oceans, where water met stone, new environments were born. Shallow shores, warm lagoons, quiet tidal pools. These places became bridges between sea and land, between movement and stillness. Life gathered there, drawn by light, by warmth, by minerals carried from rivers. Tiny organisms formed thick layers on wet rock, living carpets of green and blue, absorbing sunlight, releasing oxygen. The air grew richer, lighter, more welcoming. The sky no longer burned the surface. It protected it. Rain softened the land, wave by wave, season by season. Stone cracked into smaller pieces. Sand appeared, and the first soil began to form. Not yet fertile, but ready. In these coastal worlds, life learned a new lesson. how to survive without constant water. Some organisms stayed close to the shore, never far from moisture, never far from safety. They spread across wet surfaces, clinging to stone, absorbing light, breathing air for the first time. This was not a sudden escape from the sea. It was a careful step, a slow experiment. Life tested the land, and the land answered with resistance. Dryness, wind, sunlight. Many forms failed, many vanished, but some endured. They developed protection, thin skins, stronger walls, ways to hold water inside. Time passed in millions of years. The continents continued to drift. Mountains rose, valleys formed, rivers carved their paths across the land. Each river carried nutrients. Each flood reshaped the surface. The world became textured, not only smooth ocean, but rough land, hills, plains, shores. In these places, life spread quietly. Simple green forms covered damp ground, feeding on sunlight, anchored to soil. They changed the land, not with force, but with presence. They held soil in place. They softened stone. They created shelter for future life. The atmosphere continued to stabilize. Clouds followed steady paths. Winds learned direction. Storms became part of a pattern, not chaos, but rhythm. Day followed night. Night followed day. Life learned timing, when to grow, when to rest, when to hide. Seasons began to appear. Warm periods, cool periods. Light changed its angle. Shadows lengthened, and the land learned variation. With variation came diversity. Some organisms remained close to water. Others explored drier ground. New forms appeared, slightly taller, slightly stronger. The planet did not notice, but the future was being written. Forests did not yet exist. Animals had not yet walked. But the ground was no longer empty. Green life slowly painted the land in quiet tones under silent skies. Oxygen filled the air, layer by layer. The sky became blue. The sun became gentler. The earth entered a new age. No longer a world only of water, but a world of land and light. The shoreline became the cradle of change, where water released life and land accepted it. Life did not conquer the earth, it adapted to it. With every generation, new strength appeared, new resistance formed. The soil deepened, the air thickened, the surface stabilized. The planet became ready, not for silence, but for movement, not for stillness, but for complexity. The first quiet steps toward forests had begun, not with sound, not with speed, but with patience and endless time.
Life continued its slow journey across the land, not with speed, but with persistence. The surface of the earth changed with every season. Rain softened stone, wind carried dust, and sunlight touched new ground. What once was bare rock became a thin skin of soil, held together by the quiet work of living forms. These early land organisms spread outward from the shores, never far from water, never far from moisture. They learned to survive between rainfalls, to hold water inside, to protect themselves from drying winds. The sun became both a gift and a challenge. Its light brought energy. Its heat demanded adaptation. Some forms developed thicker outer layers. Others learned to grow closer to the ground, staying within the cool shadow of stone. The land was still empty of animals, but it was no longer lifeless. Green patterns appeared across wide regions, soft carpets of simple plants stretching along rivers and valleys. They changed the chemistry of the air, breathing in carbon, releasing oxygen. The sky grew clearer, the light grew gentler, and the world became brighter. With each passing age, the surface became more stable. Soil deepened slowly, formed from broken rock and the remains of ancient life. This soil held nutrients and water and memory. Rain no longer washed everything away. The land began to keep what it received. Roots formed, simple and fragile, but powerful in purpose. They anchored life to the ground. They drew minerals upward. They connected stone to sky. The planet learned stillness in the middle of motion. Winds crossed green surfaces, no longer empty plains, but living ground. Storms came and went without destroying what had grown. Life learned to bend, not to break. Season after season, growth followed rain, rest followed heat. The rhythm of the world deepened. Warm periods brought expansion. Cool periods brought retreat. Life adapted to both. Some forms became taller, reaching for sunlight. Others spread wide across the soil. The first simple landscapes appeared. Not forests, but living fields of green reminder. The land was no longer silent, even without sound. Every leaf moved with the wind. Every root held the ground. The atmosphere continued to change. Ozone formed high above, protecting the surface from harsh radiation. The sun became safer. The sky became shelter. The earth entered a new balance between land, air, and life. Rivers carved their paths through green valleys, carrying nutrients into the sea, feeding both worlds. Water connected land and ocean in endless cycles. Floods reshaped soil and left behind rich ground. Life followed these paths, spreading where water traveled. Mountains rose slowly, cooling the air, creating clouds and guiding rain. Each change shaped another. The planet became layered, stone below, soil above, life on the surface, sky overhead. A complete system formed through time. Still, no animals walked the land, only plants and simple living forms. But the world was ready, ready for movement, ready for sound, ready for complexity. The green surface became a foundation for future life to stand upon. Every leaf captured light. Every root held water. Every breath changed the sky. The earth prepared itself without knowing. Slowly, quietly, through endless ages, life did not conquer the land. It learned to belong to it. The soil became its home. The air became its partner. The sun became its guide. A new chapter of the planet began, written in green, across stone and time. Not with fire, not with chaos, but with growth and patience
and endless adaptation. The land continued its quiet transformation, slow, steady, and patient. What once had been thin layers of green became wider fields of living growth, spreading across valleys, climbing gentle hills, following the paths of rivers. Roots grew deeper into the soil, holding the ground together, preventing erosion and storing water beneath the surface. The land learned how to keep its strength. Simple plants became taller, not suddenly, but generation after generation. They reached toward the light, forming shadows for the first time, changing the temperature of the ground below. Shade appeared, cooler spaces formed, and new environments were born beneath growing leaves. The surface of Earth became layered, soil below, plants above, air above them all. Rain no longer struck bare stone, it touched living ground, and the water stayed, feeding roots, moving slowly through the earth. Rivers became calmer, their paths more stable, their floods less violent. The land gained memory, written in green. The atmosphere continued to change. Oxygen filled the sky more completely, and carbon slowly left the air, stored inside living tissue. The planet cooled gently, not through force, but through balance. Plants breathed in sunlight and released invisible streams of life into the air. Every leaf became a quiet engine, turning light into energy and energy into structure. The land became a mirror of the sky, responding to seasons, to clouds, to warmth and cold. Seasons deepened, not only warm and cool, but cycles of growth and rest. In wet times, plants spread. In dry times, they waited. Life learned patience. The soil thickened, formed from broken stone and the remains of earlier life. Nutrients gathered, water stayed longer, and the ground became richer. The earth became fertile, not everywhere, but in quiet regions, along rivers, near lakes, and across gentle plains. These places became centers of change. Winds passed through growing fields, moving leaves instead of dust, cooling the surface, shaping climate. Storms lost their violence. Trees and plants softened their power, and rain arrived with rhythm, not destruction. The planet became gentler. Life on land grew more complex. Simple forms learned cooperation. Some grew tall, others spread wide. Different shapes appeared, different colors, different structures. The first true plant communities formed, not yet forests, but living landscapes. They changed the chemistry of the world. They reshaped the flow of water. They altered the movement of air. Earth was no longer a silent stone world. It was a breathing surface of green. Day followed night, night followed day, and life followed light. The sun became the great guide, marking time, directing growth, shaping seasons. The moon still pulled the seas, and the tides whispered reminders of ocean origins. Even as life spread on land, it remained connected to water. Every rain carried ocean memory. Every river returned land to the sea. The system remained whole. Mountains rose slowly, cooling the air, forming clouds, guiding rain. Valleys became homes of growth, and plains became open fields of green. The planet developed regions, each with its own rhythm, each with its own story. Cold lands,
Warm lands, wet lands, dry lands. Life adapted to each. Some plants learned to survive heat. Others learned to survive cold. Some learned to store water. Others learned to lose it slowly. The diversity of land began. The surface of Earth became complex, not uniform, not simple. Patterns appeared, lines of growth, zones of rest, borders between light and shadow. The planet was painting itself with living color. Still, there were no animals walking yet. Only wind through leaves, rain on soil, sunlight on green surfaces. But the stage was ready. The air was rich with oxygen. The land was stable. The climate was balanced. The earth had prepared itself for movement, for sound, for new forms of life. Plants had transformed the world without knowing. They had built the foundation for creatures that would come later. Forests were beginning, not in shape, but in principle. Life now owned the land, not by force, but by harmony. The planet entered a new age, an age of green balance and quiet strength. The silence of stone had become the silence of leaves, a living earth, growing, waiting, and preparing for the next great change. Through time, through patience, through endless repetition, the world learned how to stand on roots and light and breath. The earth entered a new phase of harmony, where life and climate began to shape one another, slowly, quietly, without intention. Green surfaces covered wide regions of the land, and with them came change, not sudden, but continuous. Plants absorbed sunlight and released oxygen into the air, day after day, year after year. The atmosphere became lighter, clearer, and more protective. Clouds followed steady paths across the sky, carrying water from oceans to land and returning it again through rivers. The planet learned balance between heat and cold, between rain and dryness, between growth and rest. Seasons became stronger, not only warm and cool, but cycles of renewal. Spring brought expansion, summer brought fullness, autumn brought decline, winter brought silence. Life learned to move with time, not against it. In warm regions, plants spread wide and tall, forming thick layers of green. In colder lands, growth slowed, and life waited beneath snow and frost. Each region developed its own rhythm, its own pattern of survival. Mountains guided clouds, forcing rain from the sky, creating rivers that fed distant plains. Valleys became centers of growth, rich with soil and water. Deserts formed where rain rarely touched, and life adapted even there, slow, resistant, patient. The movement of air shaped climate. Winds carried warmth from the equator and cold from the poles. Storms became part of the system, not only destruction, but distribution. They mixed air, moved water, and refreshed the land. The oceans continued their deep circulation, transporting heat beneath the surface, calming extremes. Cold currents cooled warm lands. Warm currents softened frozen shores. The planet regulated itself through motion, not decision. Plants held the soil in place, preventing erosion, storing water underground. Forests slowly appeared, not suddenly, but as expanding communities of trees. Shadows covered the ground,
cooling the surface, protecting fragile life below. New layers of living space formed, above the soil, beneath the leaves, within the shade. The land became three-dimensional, not flat, but structured. With every season, life reshaped the chemistry of the air. Carbon moved from sky to leaf, from leaf to soil. The earth learned to store energy inside living matter. This exchange created stability, not stillness, but flow. Rain no longer destroyed the land, it nourished it. Floods left behind rich soil, and growth followed. The surface became resilient, able to recover, able to adapt. Time passed, millions of years, without witness. The planet grew more complex, layer upon layer. Life became part of the climate, and climate became part of life. Neither existed alone. Cold periods came and life slowed. Warm periods followed, and life expanded again. The world learned flexibility. Nothing remained permanent, yet nothing collapsed. Patterns emerged, repeating, evolving, deepening. The earth became a breathing system: water, air, stone, and living surface. Each part influenced the others. Forests cooled the air, clouds fed the forests, rivers fed the plains, and oceans guided the winds. The circle closed and opened again. Still, no voices filled the land, no footsteps marked the soil. Only wind through leaves, rain on branches, and sunlight through moving clouds. The silence was no longer empty. It was full of motion. The planet prepared for greater change, for creatures that would walk, for sounds that would echo. But for now, the earth rested in balance. A world shaped by green life, guided by water and air, held together by time. Not fast, not loud, but steady. A living planet learning how to sustain itself through cycles and patience and endless transformation.
The planet continued its quiet journey toward stability, not through force, but through repetition. Day followed night, and night returned to day, again and again. Light touched the leaves, and the leaves answered with breath. Water rose from oceans into the sky, became clouds, and returned as rain. The earth learned memory through cycles. Every season left a mark in soil, in air, in living surfaces. Plants absorbed carbon from the atmosphere and stored it inside their bodies, turning invisible gas into visible life. When leaves fell, their remains joined the soil, and the ground grew richer. The land learned to feed itself. Forests spread slowly across wide regions, forming living shields against wind and heat. Their roots held the earth together. Their branches softened sunlight. Their shadows cooled the ground. The surface of the planet became layered, soil below, plants above, air above them all. A vertical world emerged. Rain fell differently now, not on bare stone, but on living skin. Water moved slowly, soaked into the ground, fed roots, and returned to rivers. Floods no longer erased everything. They renewed it. Valleys became green corridors, carrying life from mountains to seas. The climate deepened in complexity. Warm air rose from the equator. Cold air descended from the poles. Winds followed invisible paths, shaping clouds, moving storms, distributing rain.
The Earth became a system of motion, not chaos, but circulation. Oceans stored heat and released it slowly, protecting the surface from extremes. Cold currents balanced warm waters, and warm currents softened frozen shores. The planet learned moderation. Life responded to every change. When temperatures dropped, growth slowed. When warmth returned, expansion followed. Nothing resisted the rhythm. Everything adapted to it. New environments appeared. Wetlands, open plains, cool highlands, dense forests. Each offered different conditions. Each shaped different forms of life. Diversity increased, not by sudden creation, but by long adjustment. The chemistry of the air became gentle, stable, protective. The sun's power was filtered, not weakened, but controlled. The sky became shelter. Clouds no longer carried destruction alone. They carried balance. Rain fed rivers, rivers fed oceans, and oceans guided climate. The system closed upon itself and opened again. Soil became deeper, formed from broken stone and ancient life. It held water longer and released it slowly. The land became resilient. Storms came, and the land healed. Cold periods arrived, and life waited. Warm periods returned, and life spread again. The earth learned endurance. Nothing was permanent, yet everything returned. Patterns appeared, repeated, strengthened. The surface became a living fabric, woven from wind, water, stone, and growth. No animals yet walked the land, but the stage was ready. The air was rich, the soil was stable, the climate was balanced. Every leaf prepared the way, every root held the future. The planet did not hurry. It allowed complexity to arise. Through cycles, through time, through endless motion. The earth became a world that could sustain life, not once, but continuously. A quiet harmony shaped the surface, and the silence of leaves replaced the silence of stone. The planet stood in balance, waiting for the next chapter of movement and sound and living breath. The earth continued its long journey toward maturity, not with sudden change, but with endless repetition. Cycles deepened, rain returned, clouds traveled, rivers flowed, and oceans answered with quiet motion. The land learned to remember water. Soil held moisture. Roots carried it downward, and life waited when the sky grew dry. Forests expanded across gentle plains and valleys filled with green silence. Their leaves moved with the wind, softening storms, cooling the air, and shaping the climate without voice. The sun guided every rhythm, rising, falling, and returning again. Light entered the leaves, and the leaves returned breath to the sky. The air grew richer, the world grew calmer, and the surface became stable. Mountains stood as quiet guardians, lifting clouds, guiding rain, and dividing climates. Cold winds met warm air, and storms were born, not to destroy, but to distribute. Water flowed through every path, from sky to soil, to river, to sea. The system closed and opened again.
Life followed these invisible rules. When rain arrived, growth followed. When cold returned, life rested. The Earth became a world of timing, a planet guided by seasons. Warm periods brought expansion. Cool periods brought silence. Nothing remained fixed, yet nothing collapsed. Balance ruled change. Soil deepened, formed from broken rock and the remains of ancient plants. Nutrients gathered beneath the surface, waiting for roots. Wetlands appeared, quiet places of reflection, where water and life met in stillness. Plains stretched wide, open to wind and light. Highlands cooled the sky and shaped rain patterns. Each region developed its own character, its own rhythm, its own story. The planet became diverse, not only in form, but in movement. Life grew more organized, not suddenly, but slowly. Simple communities became complex systems. Plants learned cooperation, sharing space, sharing light, sharing soil. The chemistry of the air continued to soften. Harmful rays were filtered, and sunlight became gentle. The sky became a shield. Day and night followed one another, and life followed light. The moon continued to guide tides, pulling oceans in quiet motion, teaching the planet patience. Every wave carried memory. Every season carried history. The Earth was no longer a place of extremes. It was a place of moderation. Heat did not dominate. Cold did not rule. Everything found its place between them. The silence of the world changed. It was no longer the silence of emptiness, but the silence of balance. Wind through leaves, rain on soil, sunlight on green surfaces. The land became a living skin, breathing, responding, enduring. Still, no footsteps crossed the ground. No voices filled the air. Only movement, only rhythm, only preparation. The Earth stood ready, ready for motion, ready for sound, ready for new forms of life. Plants had shaped the surface. Water had shaped the climate. Air had shaped the sky. Together, they formed a world capable of change without collapse. The planet did not rush forward. It waited. Through time, through cycles, through endless patience, the Earth reached a state of quiet maturity, a world of balance, a world of preparation, a world standing between silence and life. The foundation was complete, not for one moment, but for ages. A living system, ready for the next transformation. Through light, through water, through breath, and through time. The surface of the Earth entered a new phase of quiet anticipation. Not sudden, not loud, but filled with invisible change. Green life had prepared the land. Soil was formed. Air was gentle, and climate was balanced. The stage was ready. Along riverbanks, near lakes, and across damp plains, new forms of movement appeared. Life that once remained still now began to explore. Small creatures emerged from the water, not in great numbers, but slowly, carefully. They carried the memory of the sea inside them, moisture in their bodies, rhythm in their movement. The land was strange, dry, open, and full of light.
Every step was an experiment, every breath a lesson. Some returned to the water, unable to survive. Others endured. They developed stronger bodies, thicker skins, and ways to keep water inside. They learned to move across soil, to hide beneath leaves, to rest in shade. The first paths of motion were written into the land. No voices, no calls, only quiet movement among green surfaces. The sun guided their days, the moon guided their nights, and the seasons shaped their lives. Warm periods brought activity, cold periods brought rest. Life learned timing. The forests were not yet tall, but they spread wide. Their branches formed shelters. Their roots created safe ground. Their leaves softened light. Within these spaces, new relationships formed. Some creatures fed on plants. Others fed on smaller forms of life. The first simple food chains appeared. Not violent, but necessary. Energy flowed from sunlight to leaf to movement. The air carried new sounds, not voices, but motion. Wings brushing leaves, bodies crossing soil. The land was no longer silent. Rivers continued to shape valleys, carrying water from mountains to seas. These rivers became highways of life, connecting regions, spreading organisms, sharing resources. The earth became connected in motion, not only by wind and water, but by living paths. Insects appeared, small, fragile, and countless. They carried life from place to place, pollen, seeds, and possibility. The land learned exchange. Plants responded to movement, developing shapes, colors, and structures. Some grew tall, others spread wide. Together, they formed landscapes. The chemistry of the air continued to change. Oxygen filled the sky more completely, and the sun became gentler. The surface became safer. Time passed in silence, millions of years, without witness. The planet grew complex, layer upon layer. Life moved across plains, through forests, and along rivers. Not in haste, but with patience. Every new form carried the memory of the old. Every step carried the story of water. The earth no longer belonged only to stillness. It belonged to motion. Wind moved leaves. Leaves sheltered life. Life reshaped soil. The system deepened. The climate responded to growth, and growth responded to climate. Balance was not fixed. It was learned. Some regions became warm and wet, others dry and cool. Life adapted to each. Different forms appeared in different lands, shaped by sunlight, rain, and stone. The planet became a mosaic of worlds. Not one surface, but many, each with its own rhythm, each with its own pace. The earth continued to breathe, not only through oceans and forests, but through movement itself. A living surface had begun, no longer silent, but still gentle. No longer empty, but still calm. The foundation of complex life was being built, step by step, generation by generation. Not through force, but through adaptation. Not through speed, but through time.
The world entered a new age, an age of motion, an age of interaction, an age of quiet transformation. Life had left the water, and the land had accepted it. Together, they began a story of movement, written across soil and sky, through patience, through cycles, through endless change. The earth continued its journey toward sound, toward diversity, toward living complexity. Life continued its slow expansion across the land, not as isolated forms, but as connected systems. The surface of Earth became a web of interaction, paths of movement, flows of energy, and quiet exchanges between living beings. What once were scattered creatures now began to form communities, linked by sunlight, by water, and by survival itself. Plants stood as the foundation of this new world, anchored to the soil, absorbing light and turning it into nourishment. Creatures followed these green paths, feeding on leaves, hiding beneath branches, and resting in the shade of growing forests. The land became layered with life, above the ground, within the soil, and among the leaves. Some beings learned to climb, reaching higher into the air. Others learned to dig, finding safety beneath the surface. Each movement shaped the land, and the land shaped each movement in return. Winds carried pollen across wide distances, connecting forests that never touched, while rivers carried seeds from mountains to plains. The planet learned connection, not through thought, but through motion. Day after day, season after season, these invisible networks grew stronger. Warm regions allowed life to flourish freely. Cold regions demanded patience and endurance. Some forms adapted to heat, others to frost, some to endless rain, others to long drought. The earth became a mosaic of living worlds, each with its own rhythm, each with its own quiet laws. Forests thickened and rose higher. Their canopies formed a second sky beneath the true one. Light filtered through leaves, creating patterns of warmth and shadow. Life adapted to these patterns. Some creatures sought darkness, others followed light. Movement created sound, not voices, but the gentle language of nature. Leaves brushing together, water flowing over stone, wings touching air. The silence of stone became the silence of motion. Rivers became lifelines, drawing living forms toward their banks, connecting distant lands into one breathing system. Along these waterways, diversity increased. Different species gathered, feeding, resting, and growing side by side. The soil deepened with every fallen leaf as the remains of life returned to the earth. Life fed the land, and the land fed life. The chemistry of the atmosphere continued to change. Oxygen filled every breath of the planet, while carbon returned quietly to forests and soil. The sky softened, and the sun became a guide rather than a threat. Storms shaped the forests, and forests softened the storms. Nothing existed alone. The moon still guided the tides, and those tides whispered reminders of ocean origins. Some creatures remained close to water, others wandered far from it. Diversity increased, not in noise, but in form and function. The planet grew more complex, yet remained balanced. Cold ages arrived, and life retreated into shelter. Warm ages followed, and life spread again across open land. Through these cycles, stronger forms endured.
while others slowly disappeared. The earth learned selection, not through intention, but through change. Movement reshaped soil. Soil reshaped plants. Plants reshaped creatures, and creatures reshaped the land. The system deepened with every generation. No single form ruled this world. Only balance guided it. The planet became a living network woven from forests, rivers, winds, and time. A world of interaction, a world of adaptation, a world of quiet complexity. Life did not rush toward the future. It explored it gently. The land was no longer only green. It was alive with connection. And the earth continued forward, slowly, patiently, toward greater diversity and deeper harmony.
Life continued to evolve across the land, not in isolation, but through growing relationships between many forms. Movement became more organized. Paths appeared through forests, and patterns formed across plains and riverbanks. Creatures no longer wandered alone. They followed food, they followed shelter, and they followed the changing seasons. The land became a map of survival, written in trails and shaped by repeated journeys. Plants provided energy, and moving life carried that energy forward, from leaf to body to soil. This exchange created balance, not through control, but through connection. Some beings learned to climb, finding safety above the ground. Others learned to hide beneath it, protected from wind and cold. The surface of the planet gained layers of activity, roots below, bodies above, and air filled with motion. Light filtered through leaves, warming the ground in gentle patterns. Life adapted to these patterns. Some sought shade, others followed brightness. The forests became shelters of complexity, not only growth, but interaction. Rivers carried more than water. They carried life itself, connecting distant regions into a single system. Along their banks, communities formed, feeding on minerals and on one another. The soil deepened with every cycle of growth and decay, turning fallen leaves into nourishment and nourishment into new life. The atmosphere continued to soften. Oxygen filled the sky more completely, and harmful light was filtered above. The sun became a guide, not a danger. Storms reshaped landscapes, and landscapes adapted to storms. Nothing remained fixed. Cold ages arrived, and life withdrew into shelter. Warm ages followed, and life expanded again. Through these changes, diversity increased, not suddenly, but step by step. Different forms learned different strategies. Some became fast, others became hidden. Some became strong, others became numerous. The land became a living experiment. Selection unfolded without thought, without design, only through survival and change. Energy flowed from sunlight to plants to moving forms and back into the soil. Every motion reshaped the surface. Every surface reshaped motion. The planet became a network of paths woven from rivers, forests, and time. Life no longer belonged only to water. It belonged to land and air. The earth entered an age of interaction where every form influenced another. Silence changed its meaning. It was no longer emptiness, but balance. Wind through leaves, water across stone, movement beneath shade. The world became alive with unseen systems. No single form ruled the land. Only adaptation guided it. The future prepared itself quietly, through motion, through connection, through endless patience. Life had learned how to move, how to change, and how to belong to the earth. The land now carried stories of motion, written in soil and shaped by time. A living surface, a breathing system, a world of quiet complexity, moving forward, not in noise, but in harmony. The earth entered a new phase of transformation, a phase where emotion became more complex and silence slowly learned how to speak. From the green foundations of the land, new forms of life emerged, shaped by forests, by rivers, and by the long memory of water and light. Bodies grew stronger, not suddenly, but through endless generations of change. Structures became more refined, limbs developed, muscles learned how to move with purpose, and senses learned how to read the world. Some creatures learned to crawl across soil, feeling every vibration beneath their bodies, detecting warmth, detecting danger, detecting the presence of others. Others learned to rise into the air, their wings touching sunlight, their shadows passing silently over leaves. The land was no longer only green, it became alive with movement. Sound appeared gently, not as language, but as presence. The rustle of leaves, the splash of water, the soft rhythm of steps on soil. Life learned communication, not with words, but with motion and signal. Colors appeared on bodies, patterns formed on skin and wings, some to hide, some to warn, some to attract. The forests became theaters of interaction, not only growth, but behavior. Predator and prey emerged, not as enemies, but as balance. Energy flowed from sunlight to plant to moving body and back into the soil. This exchange shaped the web of life, stronger, deeper, and more complex with every age. Rivers became paths of migration, guiding creatures from one region to another, carrying life across valleys and plains. Mountains shaped the climate, and the climate shaped the forms of life that could survive. Each region offered new challenges and new solutions. Some animals learned to hide in shadows. Others learned to run across open land. Some learned to wait in silence. Others learned to hunt with patience. The planet learned diversity, not as chaos, but as harmony of differences. Day and night guided behavior. Light brought activity. Darkness brought rest. Seasons taught endurance, and movement taught survival. The earth became a stage of stories, written in tracks on soil and carried by wind through leaves. New relationships formed, between hunter and hunted, between shelter and movement, between sound and silence. The first simple social patterns appeared, not yet families, but awareness of others. Some creatures moved in groups, finding safety in numbers. Others walked alone, trusting speed and camouflage. The land gained new rhythms, footsteps, wing beats, and distant calls. The silence of stone had become the silence of life. Every movement changed the surface. Every surface changed movement. Paths formed where bodies passed again and again, and the ground remembered them. The planet became marked with journeys, lines of survival drawn across forests and plains. The chemistry of the air continued to soften. Oxygen filled every breath of the world, and the sky became a shelter for living motion. Storms reshaped landscapes,
and creatures learned to hide, to wait, and to return when calm arrived. Cold ages came, and life retreated into forests and valleys. Warm ages followed, and life spread again across open land. Through these cycles, stronger forms remained, and weaker ones faded quietly. Selection shaped bodies, not through thought, but through endurance. Eyes learned to see farther, ears learned to hear softer sounds, noses learned to read the air. Awareness began to appear, not as thought, but as reaction. Danger was sensed, shelter was sought, food was followed. The earth was no longer only a system of plants. It had become a system of movement and response. Life now carried memory in behavior, not only in chemistry. Paths of migration appeared, repeated year after year. The moon still guided the tides, and those tides reminded land creatures of ancient water origins. Some returned often to rivers, others lived far from them. The planet grew louder, not in noise, but in presence. Wind through leaves, water over stone, and bodies crossing soil. The world became filled with signs of life. No single creature ruled the land. Only balance shaped survival. The future prepared itself quietly, through motion, through interaction, through endless adaptation. Life had learned how to move, how to listen, and how to belong to the earth. The land now carried stories of sound and shadow, written in footprints and shaped by time. A living surface, a breathing system, a world of quiet awareness, moving forward, not in chaos, but in harmony. The age of animals had begun, and the earth stepped closer to a world of consciousness through patience, through change, and through endless time.
Life continued its journey across the land, not only by movement, but by learning. Creatures no longer reacted fakat to al-dhawi wal-harara. They began to respond to one another. The forests became places of encounter, where paths crossed, and stories of survival were written in silence. Some animals learned to follow others, moving in groups, finding safety in shared presence. Others remained alone, trusting speed, or stillness, or camouflage. The land became a network of relationships, not only between plant and animal, but between animal and animal. Predator and prey shaped one another, not as enemies, but as balance. Bodies became faster, eyes became sharper, and hearing became more sensitive. The earth learned awareness, not as thought, but as instinct. Footsteps marked the soil, and the soil remembered them. Paths formed across plains and beneath forests, following rivers, following seasons. Migration began, slow and rhythmic, guided by light and temperature. Animals moved with the year, toward warmth, toward water, toward food. The planet learned motion in cycles, not random, but patterned. Sounds became more varied, calls, warnings, signals, not language, but meaning. A rustle could mean danger. A movement could mean shelter. A call could mean return. The silence of the world deepened, not empty, but filled with listening. Nights became active for those who learned to move in darkness. Eyes adapted to shadows, ears adapted to quiet.
The world gained two rhythms, day and night. Life learned when to hide and when to appear. The climate continued to guide behavior. In warm regions, life expanded freely. In cold lands, creatures learned to store energy, to grow thick coverings, and to wait. The land became a classroom of adaptation. Mountains created barriers, and valleys created corridors. Some species remained isolated. Others spread across continents. The earth became divided into worlds, each with its own living rules. Rivers connected these worlds, bringing movement and exchange. Animals followed water, as life once followed the sea. The memory of water remained inside every body. Plants still formed the foundation, turning light into nourishment. Animals carried that energy forward, into motion, into sound, into behavior. Energy moved through the system without rest. The web of life grew denser, more complex, more sensitive. Every change affected another. If one form grew stronger, another learned to escape. If one moved faster, another learned to hide. The earth learned balance through tension, not peace, but harmony. Storms still reshaped landscapes, and animals learned shelter. Droughts arrived, and life retreated toward rivers. Rain returned, and movement followed. The planet taught patience. Generations passed, not in memory, but in form. Bodies changed, behavior changed, and survival refined itself. The world was no longer silent stone. It was a living conversation between wind and leaf, between river and soil, between creature and creature. No voice ruled this conversation. Only adaptation guided it. Awareness grew, not as thought, but as response. Danger was sensed, safety was remembered, and paths were repeated. The earth became a place of stories, written in tracks and erased by rain, yet always rewritten. Life did not rush toward complexity. It unfolded slowly, layer by layer, from simple movement to interaction to community. The planet prepared for something greater, for minds, for memory, for meaning. But for now, it remained a world of instinct and motion and quiet learning. A world alive with behavior and shaped by endless change. The age of animals deepened, and the earth continued its long journey toward awareness, through time, through movement, through life itself. Life on Earth continued to grow in complexity, not only in form, but in behavior. Creatures no longer moved only to search for food. They began to recognize one another, to remember places, and to respond to repeating patterns in their world. Forests became spaces of memory, where paths were followed again and again, and shelters were returned to after every journey. Some animals learned to remain close to others, forming small groups, moving together, resting together, and facing danger together. Within these early gatherings, a new force appeared: cooperation. not as a choice, but as a path to survival. Those who stayed together lived longer. Those who warned others survived storms and predators. And those who shared movement learned safety. The land filled with silent communication, postures, motions, and simple signals of presence. A raised body meant danger. A sudden movement meant escape. A still form meant rest. The earth learned language without words. Sound changed its meaning. No longer only noise, but message. Calls echoed through valleys, not as songs, but as signals. The night became alive with listening. Every rustle carried meaning. Every shadow became information. Eyes adapted to darkness, ears adapted to quiet, and minds adapted to patterns. Memory appeared, not as thought, but as repetition. Paths were remembered, shelters were returned to, and danger was avoided. Migration became more precise, guided by seasons and light. Animals followed warm winds, followed rivers, followed ancient routes written into the land. The planet gained invisible maps, drawn in movement and time. Relationships deepened, not only between predator and prey, but between companions. Some remained together for long periods, raising young, protecting them, and teaching them where to move. The first signs of care appeared, not emotion, but instinct shaped into protection. Bodies continued to change, but behavior changed faster. Hunting became organized, not chaotic, but patterned, waiting, watching, and moving together. The land became a theater of strategy, not conflict, but balance. Plants still fed the world, turning light into energy, and animals carried that energy into motion and awareness. The web of life grew more sensitive. One change echoed through many others. If one species moved, another followed. If one disappeared, another changed its path. The earth learned consequence. Climate continued to guide behavior. Cold seasons brought gathering. Warm seasons brought spreading. Storms taught shelter, and droughts taught patience. The sky remained the great clock, and the sun remained the guide. The moon still pulled the seas, and its rhythm echoed in bodies and movement. Some creatures learned to travel great distances, crossing plains, crossing forests, and crossing mountains. Their journeys shaped the land, and the land shaped their journeys. The world was no longer only physical. It had become behavioral. Not just a place of matter, but a place of response. Awareness grew slowly, not as thought, but as recognition. Recognition of danger, recognition of shelter, recognition of others. The silence of Earth changed again. It was no longer the silence of plants, nor the silence of simple movement. It became the silence of watching and waiting. Every forest carried stories of movement. Every river carried stories of survival. The planet became a memory of living paths. No voice spoke, yet everything listened. No mind ruled, yet awareness spread. The earth stood at the edge of something new, not yet intelligence, but preparation. Not yet thought, but foundation. A world where life no longer only existed, but began to sense, to remember, and to respond. Through time, through adaptation, through endless cycles, the age of instinct deepened, and the path toward consciousness slowly opened. The planet prepared itself, not for silence, but for minds. And in this quiet balance, Earth moved forward toward a future of thought and story and awareness.
Life on Earth entered its most delicate transformation, not in body alone, but in perception. Creatures no longer reacted faqat to movement and light. They began to anticipate, to choose, and to learn from experience. The land became a world of memory, where past journeys shaped future paths, and survival depended on recognition. Forests turned into schools of instinct, teaching through repetition, through failure, and through time. Some animals learned to observe before moving, to wait before acting, to sense danger before it arrived. This was not thought, but preparation for thought. Eyes followed motion with intention, ears separated silence from sound, and bodies responded with precision. Patterns formed in behavior, feeding times, resting places, and migration routes. The earth became mapped inside living minds. Rivers were remembered, mountains were avoided, and safe valleys became homes. Groups grew more organized, not only moving together, but acting together. Signals gained meaning, postures became messages, and calls became guidance. A raised body warned others. A sudden cry called them back. A still position meant safety. The silence of the world changed again. It was no longer the silence of nature, but the silence of awareness. Night became a time of listening, of watching, of waiting. Eyes adapted to darkness, and memory adapted to fear. Shelter became important, not only from weather, but from danger. Animals learned where to hide and when to move. The land became divided into territories, not drawn by lines, but by behavior. Some regions were claimed by groups, others remained paths of travel. Conflict appeared, not as war, but as competition. Food became more than energy. It became a reason for movement and for defense. Bodies changed with behavior, stronger limbs, sharper senses, and faster responses. The planet learned tension, not chaos, but balance through challenge. Every success shaped the next generation. Every failure disappeared into time. Selection refined awareness. Some creatures learned to use tools of nature, stones, branches, and shelter. Not yet intelligence, but the edge of it. The world became interactive, not only physical, but behavioral. Wind through leaves carried warnings. Movement through grass carried meaning. The land was no longer only a place to exist, it became a place to understand. Memory deepened, paths were chosen, and mistakes were avoided. Life began to prepare for something new. Not only survival, but perception. Not only movement, but decision. The earth entered an age of awareness without language. A world where creatures no longer faqat lived, but recognized, remembered, and adapted. The silence became thoughtful, not empty. Every forest held watchers, every river held travelers. The planet became alive with unseen minds. Not minds like humans, but minds of instinct
and recognition. The future of thought began here, in movement, in memory, and in attention. The earth stood at the threshold between instinct and intelligence, a quiet world, waiting for its next transformation.
Life continued its quiet movement toward awareness, not through sudden change, but through countless small adjustments. Creatures no longer acted only by instinct. They began to remember, to compare, and to choose between paths. The land became a place of learning, where each journey carried experience, and each mistake carried consequence. Groups became more stable, not only gathering, but remaining together, sharing space, sharing movement, and sharing time. The forests turned into living communities where individuals recognized one another and followed familiar forms. Signals became clearer. A sound meant warning. A posture meant direction. A movement meant return. The earth learned communication without words. Sound traveled through valleys, and meaning traveled with it. The night became a world of listening. Every step, every breath, every distant call carried information. Eyes learned to read shadows, ears learned to separate silence from danger, and memory learned to store these lessons. The planet became a school of behavior. Some creatures learned to protect the young, to remain near them, to guide them through safe paths. The first bonds appeared, not emotion, but survival shaped into care. Hunting became coordinated, not random, but shared, waiting together, moving together, and retreating together. The land became marked with strategy, not conflict, but balance between risk and safety. Paths of migration grew longer, more precise, and more reliable. Animals followed seasons, following warmth, following rain, and following memory. The earth gained invisible routes, drawn across plains and forests. Territories formed, not with borders, but with familiarity. Some regions became homes, others became passages. The climate continued to shape behavior. Cold seasons brought gathering, warm seasons brought spreading. Storms taught shelter, and droughts taught patience. Bodies changed with behavior, stronger limbs, better vision, and sharper awareness. The planet refined its creatures through time and through challenge. The world no longer belonged only to movement. It belonged to recognition. Recognition of danger, recognition of food, recognition of others. The silence deepened again, not empty, but thoughtful. Forests carried watchers, rivers carried travelers, and plains carried memory. Life became organized in patterns, not chaos, but response. Some creatures learned to wait, others learned to act. Balance formed between stillness and motion. The earth entered an age of preparation, not yet thought, but readiness for thought. Awareness spread quietly, not as intelligence, but as sensitivity. The world became filled with meaning, even without language. Every sound, every shadow, every movement became part of understanding. The future of consciousness approached slowly, through behavior, through memory, through connection. The planet continued forward towards something new and unseen, a world learning not only to live, but to notice, to remember, and to respond. The earth stood closer than ever to a thinking world, waiting for the final transformation. Life reached a quiet turning point, where instinct and memory began to merge, and behavior grew closer to intention. Creatures no longer moved only because of hunger or fear. They moved because they remembered, because they expected, and because they learned from the past. The land became a world of experience, where each path carried lessons, and each shelter carried history. Groups grew stronger, not only in number, but in connection. Movement became coordinated, not chaotic, but shared. Waiting together, traveling together, and protecting one another. The forests became spaces of recognition, where familiar forms were noticed and unfamiliar forms were avoided. Sound carried more than presence, it carried meaning. A call could warn, a pause could signal safety, a movement could guide others forward. The earth learned conversation without language. The night became a time of awareness. Every rustle, every shadow, every distant sound was read and remembered. Eyes adapted to see patterns, ears adapted to detect difference, and minds adapted to connect events. Memory deepened, not only of places, but of outcomes. Safe paths were chosen again. Dangerous paths were avoided. Migration became guided by knowledge, not only by climate. Animals followed routes learned from others, carried across generations. The planet gained invisible traditions, written in movement and behavior. Care became more visible, not as emotion, but as survival shaped into protection. Young were guided, sheltered, and taught where to go. The first signs of teaching appeared, not through words, but through example, watching, following, and repeating. The land became a place of learning, where each life copied the wisdom of another. Hunting became structured, waiting, observing, moving together. The balance between action and patience deepened. The earth refined awareness through time, through challenge, and through repetition. Bodies continued to evolve, but behavior evolved faster. The world was no longer only shaped by climate, it was shaped by experience. Every storm taught shelter. Every drought taught movement. Every season taught timing. The sky remained the great clock, and the sun remained the guide. The moon still marked rhythm, pulling tides and echoing inside living bodies. Some creatures learned to use simple tools of the world: stones, branches, and shelter. Not intelligence, but preparation for it. The planet stood between instinct and thought, between reaction and decision, between survival and awareness. Silence changed again. It was no longer only the silence of nature, but the silence of observation. Forests became places of watching. Rivers became paths of memory, and plains became stages of movement. The earth carried minds that could sense, remember, and respond. Not yet human, but no longer unaware. The future of thought began in this quiet age, through behavior, through connection, through learning. Life did not suddenly become intelligent. It approached intelligence slowly, through countless small changes,
through endless time. The planet prepared itself for something unseen, a world where awareness would deepen, where memory would become story, and where movement would become purpose. The Earth reached the edge of consciousness, a place between instinct and mind, between silence and understanding, a world ready for its final transformation. Through patience, through connection, through endless cycles, life stood prepared to think, to remember, and to know. The story of Earth has never been loud. It has always been written in silence, through water, through wind, through light, and through time. From fire to oceans, from oceans to green land, from movement to awareness, the planet learned how to live, step by step, without hurry. Every mountain, every river, every forest carries the memory of this long journey. Life did not appear suddenly. It unfolded gently, learning to breathe, to move, to remember, and to belong. The Earth became more than stone and sky. It became a home of balance, a place where silence and motion share the same space. Tonight, as you listen to this story, you are part of that long chain of awareness, a quiet witness to billions of years of change. Let the rhythm of the planet slow your thoughts. Let the memory of oceans calm your breath, and let the silence of forests rest your mind. The journey of Earth continues beyond this moment, beyond this night. But for now, the story can rest, and so can you. May the calm of ancient oceans surround you. May the patience of mountains stay with you. And may the quiet light of the stars guide your sleep. Thank you for traveling through time with us. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being part of this silent story. Good night, and may your dreams be as deep and peaceful as the Earth itself.